public input. Just in regards to the agenda that went out, the Safety Collective Tamaki Makoto, they will be coming through at a later meeting of our committee. So just wanted to let everybody know that. But I have however, accepted the public input from Mark Thomas and Cohen Hendrick in regards to the Auckland Night Shelter Trust. And basically they wanted to update the committee on the work of the Auckland Night Shelter Trust and to generally support the proposed strategy. Can I say at the offset is that at 4 minutes, Mark, if you and Cohen are there, at 4 minutes there will be a bell sounding, and then I would like you both similar to that, and if you could then just wrap up, and then I'll open up for questions. So Mark, to you and Cohen, and hopefully I've pronounced your name properly. It's over to you both. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, talo whalawa. Just checking you can hear me okay, Chair?
Yep, ka pai.
Hey. No mai haere mai, everyone. My name's Mark Thomas. I'm chair of the Auckland Night Shelter Trust, which was established 3 years ago by Brendan Mengel, who apologises for not being able to be here. We've spent that time confirming the need for a night shelter, developing the operating system in consultation with LifeWise, the City Mission, and others. Koen, did you want to just introduce yourself?
Kia ora everyone, I'm Koen Hendricks. I'm the secretary of the Auckland Night Shelter Trust for the last 2-3 years, so came in relatively short after it was established.
Terrific. Our purpose today is to update you on the value of a shelter and the role that can play in solving homelessness in Auckland. Can I take the next slide, please? I want to congratulate you on a very thoughtful contribution to Council's role in this complex area. I think Kia Whai Kāinga Tātou Katoa does a terrific job, particularly focusing on the core elements of housing, wellbeing and connections. I think that's a great way to summarise what you call the domain activity. And I'm sure you don't underestimate the very great value that Council plays coordinating all of the providers in the area. Next slide, please. One of the most impressive things about your plan is that you've been able to get everything on one page, which I know Council's famous for. These 23 focus areas, of course, enable the 4 interventions that you refer to: prevention, early intervention, support, and establishing the foundation. And it's this third area, support, where we think a night shelter can add value. Next slide, please. And we've shown here where we see that opportunity is, pulling out 3 of the 23 focus areas, providing another pathway, boosting the supply of support, and helping connect the transitions for people leaving other forms of state care. I'll talk about that more as we go. Next slide, thanks. So the reason we need night shelters in Auckland is to better fit the need of our homeless population. Now, we need to be very careful, of course, about generalising a population with such discrete needs. But this slide shows one way we think, and others do too, of thinking about that need and why we think it's useful. Next slide, thanks. Because this shows who we see that need can be better addressed by plugging what we call the shelter gap. We see the value a shelter can play is primarily targeting those who need more help than the current state model provides, but not so much that Housing First is designed for. But of course, it's not quite as simple as that, but that's the core. Next slide, thanks. If you're offering something new, it's good to ask what the potential users think. And so unsurprisingly, over 90% of the 100 rough sleepers we surveyed in 2018 said they would use a night shelter. Next slide, thanks. But there's a gap that still exists, right? Several years ago, the New Zealand Parliament worked with a bunch of agencies to define homelessness. And part of the reason we have a shelter gap is even their definition of temporary accommodation didn't include a night shelter. Next slide, thanks. The Salvation Army Policy Unit, which does very good work in this area, also is not explicitly referred to the role of a night shelter. Next slide, thanks. More recently, of course, we've got a big step forward with the New Zealand's first, not New Zealand first, but New Zealand's first homeless action plan, launched by the government earlier this year, just a few weeks before COVID hit. Next slide, thanks. It's got, as you'll know, 4 key areas: prevention and supply. Next slide. Support and enablers. And support is the area where a night shelter can add now value. Next slide. The most important thing that's happened, as you all know, in recent years is not a new homeless definition or even the government's plan, but Housing First. And Housing First has an emergency shelter placement, such as a night shelter, as a core part of the homeless continuum. And that's an essential part of our model, being plugged into solving this continuum. Next slide, thanks. Part of the challenge of night shelters, of course, is that they haven't always done a good enough job around the world and even here in New Zealand. They've been run with good intentions, but not with enough integration with other parts of the homelessness system. This video shows you what's changing. We'll just watch the first part of this. If we could click that now, please. Just click the link in the middle would be terrific. Maya, is that working? If it's not, I'll just go on.
Sorry, it's just taking a little while to load.
No problem.
Oh, now it won't go at all.
Chair, hopefully the clock stops at this point.
Yeah, I've stopped the clock
Sorry.
and paused it for 10 seconds.
Sorry, it won't load at all now. I'd try and...
Mark, if you could continue,
Yeah.
because what we'll end up doing is the video will be attached to the minutes, but
People
we'll
can watch,
ensure
sure.
that the video gets sent out to the committee.
Terrific. Look, it's a short video of 3 minutes, and it shows a night shelter working in the US as part of the Housing First system. So it talks about what shelters do well and what they don't do. So look, it's a great real-life example of the sort of thing we're talking about for Auckland. So if we jump to the next slide. So look, today, in addition to having developed our operating and care model over the last couple of years and testing that with suppliers, we now have available buildings, ironically thanks to COVID, and we also have funding opportunities. So we're in the middle of an RFP with HUD and the Ministry for Social Development to actually help plug this emergency housing gap. Next slide, thanks. And just the next slide. So we've got the opportunity now to plug the night shelter gap and put it more clearly as part of the permanent housing system, the permanent solving homelessness system. Next slide, thanks. So I'm not asking you for money today, which I suppose is a good thing because I read that you don't have so much. I do know you do have a little available for worthy causes, but that's not the purpose of this. Rather, the purpose is that you think about the role this opportunity can play in greater success of Kia Whai Kāinga Tātou Katoa. And the final slide. Thanks everyone for your time. I just want to conclude by acknowledging the terrific work people like Natalie Hansby and Ben Brooks do within Council. I know there's a team of others who do this, but these are the ones who we've been dealing with most directly, and they do a terrific job working with you. Kia ora tātou. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Mark, and I just wanted to sort of see if, Cohen, is there anything you wish to add? And before you answer that question, Councillor Newman has moved an extension of time, which I will second for a few more minutes, Mark and Cohen, and then I will open it up for questions as well. So Cohen, I'm inviting you to see if you wish to speak. I will put that time of extension. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Looks like it's unanimous. All those against? So it's moved. So there you go. All yours now then, Cohen, if you wish to say anything, then I've got a few questions for both of you. Mark?
Thank you. So the only thing I would like to add here is to really think how much social damage you can avoid by having a night shelter, by avoiding people hitting the street, which is very heavily on them from a psychological point of view, and you can actually avoid addictions and other psychological issues by having them on the street for a month, 2 months, 3 months. It's typically something we've seen talking to the homeless. So if we can come in early and be that catch-all and avoid them hitting the street, give them the right wraparound services, that would add significant value and actually reduce the amount of people getting on the street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Look, before I open up for questions, Mark and Cohen, just to let you know, I and you've acknowledged Ben and Debbie. I've contacted them, and they will be obviously working with you in regards to the proposal. There's obviously no commitment in regards to any funding, which is a good thing, but they will continue to meet with you around council's work, even around reviewing and providing feedback on their night shelter proposals, if in fact you wish that to happen. So look, I'm going to open it up, and the first question is from Councillor Simpson.
Morena, thank you, Chair. Mark, thank you for your presentation. My question is, and I acknowledge that you're not asking for money, but of course this is an emergency time with a lot of impacts through a lot of parts of social fabric of Auckland. So is there anything specific you think that council could do to assist?
Look, I think the most important thing is continuing to do the vital coordination role that you do. Look, I know there have been some staffing changes in the areas that particularly coordinate homelessness. I think there may be a role that needs to be recruited, and I know that'll be a challenge for you with all of the challenges that you have. But I've just come off a call with the Rough Sleepers Steering Group, which in fact is meeting virtually weekly now to support those agencies who are involved helping the homelessness. And look, council coordinates that. It's an incredibly valuable thing that you do. It's a complex community, lots of people involved. There's typically 30 people on the call. So continuing to make sure there is at least a sort of people resource to help coordinate the efforts of the agencies and the providers is perhaps the most important thing.
Thank you. Chair, a supplementary then, is that what we are doing?
So if that's to me, Councillor, I mean, I know that there has been, I think, people moving into different roles within this area. And look, I think there is a gap actually currently in terms of the permanent position that was in that situation of coordinating the homeless activities for council. There's somebody who's kind of looking after it, which is terrific, and that person does a phenomenal job. But look, there is a gap there, right? And it's great that someone's covering. I'm sure there's lots of people in council who are covering different things at the moment. So I guess I'm just alerting you to the fact that, you know, it would be very damaging, I suppose, to sort of council's aspirations to coordinate if we were to lose resourcing from that area.
Covered, Councillor Simpson?
Yeah, I suppose I might just follow up with you, Mr. Chair, offline around that. You know, it's going to be a challenge, isn't it? But I see that need. So thanks for alerting us, Mark.
Sure.
There's an opportunity to ask any of the questions as well when we get to the item 14 on the homelessness. Councillor Cooper.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. It is really interesting because I guess my question is more around the suburbs, because at the beginning of the term, one of our new Waitaki Rangers local board members was really keen to get something like a night shelter going in Henderson, West Auckland somewhere, because we do have quite a few rough sleepers at night, and it is it's a problem for them, but it's also a problem for the community. And is this, and our staff told us, no, that's not the way we're going now. You know, it's not the right thing to do, but I can see from the presentation there really is a gap. Do you envisage, for example, I mean, you're obviously going to be focused on the city centre, of course, but is that an option then, for example, if you've got people maybe living in Henderson or New Lynn in the streets, on a train line, they can jump on the train if they've got enough money and get into the night shelter at night? Or is it going to be specifically for people that usually sleep in the city centre?
Look, it's a great question. We explicitly use the term night shelters because we're not claiming to have the credit. There is, in fact, some of you may know, there is actually another group who are working on a night shelter proposal for the central city too. What we want to develop is a model that can be replicated in different parts of the city. And I mean, Vision West were on the rough steering sleeping call this morning, and you know, they remind us regularly how acute the issues are in West Auckland and how stretched they are. So the short answer to your question is it's not designed to be exclusive to people who are living in the central city. Obviously, the numbers that we could cope with on any given night are limited, but there's not going to be some kind of passport that we need to see that you're a CBD resident, right? So that maybe addresses that issue. But the broader, I think, answer is to say we've got to develop something that's, you know, a permanent part of the homelessness continuum. That's our objective. And so that's why working with partners such as City Mission, LifeWise, and we need to engage with Vision West is an important part of what we're doing.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Angela.
I was doing some work with Housing First a couple of years ago out our way, and which led me to Auckland and Hamilton. And at that point, we weren't going down, or the shelters weren't supported in the model. And I'm just wondering what's happened. Has there been a realisation that actually there is a need for shelters and we must support them? So their intention was to go straight into housing, accepting there is not enough housing. So where does Housing First, the model itself, sit with this?
Look, another great question. Look, I think the policy people, both within council and government, would tell you that they've been nervous about the role of shelters, and actually there's some good reasons for that. We know, I mean, you may have seen the news about the shelter in Wellington last year. So there've been some shelters badly run, although always with good intentions. What I think is changing is you know, the work that we, and I'm sure the other shelter people have done, you know, talking with people who are really at the coalface about the value that it can play as an integrated part of the Housing First and homelessness continuum. So it's kind of, it fills a gap actually that I think you can see is there. So you're quite right to say that it's not been, in fact, it's been explicitly excluded, I think, previously. And I suppose we're not sort of sitting here asking for permission, actually. We're sort of advising you of an opportunity, I guess, giving you some insight into the approach we're taking, looking for, you know, ideas that you have, but saying this is the path we're on because we think it's justified and actually is an essential part of what we need to do a better job dealing with some of our most vulnerable.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
If there's no further questions, Mark, to you and Cohen, thank you so much. We look forward to continuing the dialogue with Ben and Debbie, with the team, and again, look forward to see what eventuates. So to you both, thank you so much. And I have got Councillor Fletcher. She will move. I will second. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Again, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Cohen.
Kia ora tātou. Thanks, everyone.
Kia ora tātou. Thanks.
Good luck with your challenges.
Thank you.